And to that other breaking story from the Judiciary Committee yesterday, the accusations that the FBI spied on sitting Republican senators as part of the January 6th investigation. What do we know? Well, we turn to Mark Meredith. He is live from the White House with more. Hi, Mark. Good morning.
Dana, I sure am. Good morning to you. Today, Republican senators are outraged, if not downright furious with the FBI after they learned that some of their calls were also probed as part of the investigation into January 6th, where senators were basically finding out where these people were calling and where they were calling from. These reports are just coming out yesterday, and we're learning who was targeted in the probe, and they include Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Josh Hawley of Missouri, Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, and Representative Mike Kelly of Pennsylvania. A document recently uncovered by the Trump administration and first reported by Fox Digital shows the FBI pulled the phone records of those lawmakers a few years after the January 6th attack. As Politico points out, the probe did not obtain the content of the calls, only the recipients, the lengths of the calls, and the date on which they were placed. The request for this information was approved by a grand jury. This was all tied to the FBI and Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigation into the alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election. President Trump was charged but not convicted in the case. The case's code name was Arctic Frost. Lawmakers, as Aisha mentioned, will have a lot of questions about this, about why this was allowed to happen, and are also considering next steps to hold the FBI accountable.
I don't know how Grassley wants to handle it. I'm not going to get ahead of
government administration.
But I tell you, this is a serious situation. We're going to have to get to the bottom.
We've yet to hear from the former special counsel about all of this. We'll be curious if he gives any comment at any point. But we are hearing from President Trump today. Dana, he says it looks like Jack Smith had his hand in the cookie jar. Dana.
All right, Mark, thank you so much.
Let's bring in our colleague, Will Cain, host of the Will Cain Show, 4 o'clock Eastern every day out of Texas. And Will, good morning to you. So Josh Hawley is one of the senators on this list. We're going to talk to him next hour. But here is Ron Johnson's characterization of what was happening there. Watch here.
It should shock, it should outrage every American. Quite honestly, by now, it should be obvious to every American that it's not the Republicans that are a threat to our democracy. It's President Obama, it's President Biden, it's the radical leftists that have served and support them. This is outrageous.
In the end, the president winning re-election forced the case just to be dropped. And it was left there after his victory. What do you think of it, Will? What do you think it goes?
Bill, I think if they did this to a Republican senator, a dozen Republican senators, imagine what they did to the average American. That's not simply a talking point. Think about this. No matter how you feel about any one of these individual Republican senators, this represents roughly 20% of the Republican Senate. These are elected officials. This is votes by people in their state to send a representative to the United States Senate, and they are placed under investigation. And I think that's an attack not just on the Republican Party, but an attack on the American people. You know, we've learned the power of projection, Bill and Dana, and I think we've learned it very profoundly over the past decade. That when you accuse someone else of a certain sin, it is almost biblical that you are the one committing that sin. And for over a decade now, we've heard warnings of authoritarianism, of tyranny. And if this doesn't fit the definition, I don't know what does. Taking your political opposition, taking half of America, because I do believe this is an attack on Americans, and placing them under investigation is the definition of an authoritarian government.
You know, last week or a week and a half ago, James Comey was indicted by a grand jury. This apparently was also approved by a grand jury. Do you think that the Justice Department will release the underlying documents that explain why it even went to the grand jury in the first place?
Wouldn't it be fascinating to know? Yes, I hope so, Dana. Why would a dozen Republican senators be under investigation? Why would you be monitoring their calls, the length of their calls, who they were placing those calls to? What did they have to do with January 6th? Did these Republican senators show me the documentation? Did they, in your investigation, somehow organize, perpetuate, instigate, stoke what they called a threat to democracy, what ended up being a riot on January 6th? Because I think this fits the bill as a threat to democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yesterday on your program, and we're 4 weeks from an election in places like New Jersey and Virginia, you had the Winsome Sears on, who wants to be governor there. But on the Democratic side, you had the story break over the weekend. Jay Jones, who wants to be the attorney general, 3 years ago, exchanged text messages with a Republican in the state legislature there in the Commonwealth. And this was nasty stuff, talking about putting bullets in one of the Republican Speaker of the House. You asked her about it. Let's go ahead and play her soundbite. Here's what she said.
He's doubling down because no sooner than he sent that out, the so-called apology, he was right back to, well, Trump this, Trump that. As we would say in the Marine Corps, is not fit for office. He is not fit to move to the next rank. We don't need anyone who needs on-the-job training. And Jay Jones, with his murderous comments, we can't have him. He can never be Attorney General.
Some of the things that strikes me is that man has 2 young kids, and they talked about putting a bullet, talked about killing the children. Now, several Democrats in Virginia have condemned it, but no one said to drop out. Now, you got 28 days here, okay? If Will Cain was talking this way in a chat room on Facebook, you'd have the cops knocking on your door.
Right.
And they'd have questions for you.
Right.
And like, what was your intent? What's in your mind? What's going on here? And in this case, I mean, it's possible he could be the Attorney General of the Commonwealth.
And Bill, I don't know that my employers would be real thrilled with the fact that I was talking that way over social media. And we, the people, or the people of Virginia, are the employers of, or potential employers of, Jay Jones. So let me ask these employers, the people of Virginia, you don't have to expect everyone to agree with you. And I had this conversation after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I don't expect everyone in my life to agree with my politics, but I do have a right to expect basic human decency. And although Jay Jones sent these texts before the current climate, before the murder of Charlie Kirk, before attacks on ICE agents, all these other Democrats today live in and recognize that climate, Bill. And I have to ask all of those Democrats who are not walking away from Jay Jones, you don't expect basic human decency of someone who would be employed by the state of Virginia? Again, it's not about his policy or his politics, but the voters of Virginia have to ask, in this world, we know the world we live in today. We watched what happened to Charlie. In this world, isn't it a basic standard that you could expect human decency and not fantasize about the murder of your opponents?
All right, Will Cain, thank you so much for being on our show this morning. We'll see you at 4 o'clock, right before the 5.
I'm not sure he survives.
All right.
We'll see. Thank you, Will. See you at 4 o'clock.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.